Hey everybody, it's Keylime here again. This time I figured I'd do a delve specific video, so I'm going to start with the Warrens. The Warrens is of course a delve with these pretty interesting Pansvale / Warrens troops. So let me quickly show you what those troops are and what they're all about. So you can find them if you just sort by kingdom and then go down to the Warrens. If you just try and find Warrens, you won't find it. But we can quickly talk about which ones you might want to get from your Chaos Shards. So Trickster's kind of annoying. When you're fighting up against Trickster, he's all about just trying to switch your first and last people. He also gets some good mana generation with this green gems explosions. So if you're going up against a Tricksters and you get switched, my best advice to you is to let them switch you again. More often than not, I think the first fight you have is with one of these people, and it's actually two of them. So let them both switch you and then try and kill them before they can do anything else. Like if they switch your people and then you're stuck that way for the rest of the delve, you're not going to have a good time. So definitely something to consider. But overall, just kind of an annoying troop. I don't use him in any capacity, but from a delve troop perspective, of course, he's solid. Defensively, they use him solidly. He's very annoying. Bunnycorn, nothing all that interesting. He creates some yellow gems. He charms somebody. Not too crazy. From a mana generation perspective, he's okay. He starts with 75% mana, so that's kind of cool. Not that great. Also not that great with Trickster. Lapina Knight's a little more interesting, so she does 27 to a specific target and then grants all allies a random status effect, so you could potentially enchant everybody, bless everybody, barrier everybody, something like that. It's kind of cool, but the fact that it's random makes this a little less interesting, so I would never really depend on this troop. It's kind of like one of those slot machine, just have fun with type troops. Cool art, but I can't really see myself using them in any capacity. From this perspective, putting her in the first slot seems to be what they would want you to do, but I don't think she's really strong enough to warrant something like that, so overall not that great. Luna's pretty interesting, however. What I really like about her is that she's got this explode a random gem when matching yellow gems, so just matching any yellow gems. It's not a 4-5 match, it's just if you match yellow gems at all, you get this loop potential here with this hidden trap, so that's actually really nice. Putting her passively in your lineup just for this could be pretty cool. Beyond all of that, she actually does solid damage to everybody, and then her either or thing down here is kind of interesting. So she's going to do negative debuffs, 1 to 2 negative debuffs to everybody, or grant 1 to 2 buffs to everybody on your side. So with one cast of her, you could potentially like freeze and entangle the entire enemy team, or you could potentially bless and barrier your entire team. Again, it's kind of a slot machine, so it's kind of hard to specifically build around her, but what's nice is you do get this passive benefit of this exploding yellow, so I think she's pretty cool. I want to try and use her more. Now that I'm kind of making this video, I'm tempted to try and put her in some more lineups, but definitely somebody that I think is worth spending your Chaos Shards to try and get, and then you could definitely build some lineups around her that could be pretty interesting. She's Wild Folk Mystic, so that makes you feel like she would potentially want to be in a Bard lineup of some kind because she's Wild Folk. But again, Bard to me at least is not that great of a class, not towards the end game at least. Early game it's one of the best, but late game it's really weak. So not a ton of synergy with her Mystic or Wild Folk type troops that I can think of. But it's overall cool troop, definitely worth looking at. So then when it comes to the actual delve itself, the colors that you're going to be working with are green and yellow. So if you have High King Iron Gut, of course you're very excited to see that yellow is included, so that means you can use him for your lineup. Fortunately for me, this is like my go-to team whenever there's green or blue as one of the colors. I'm very excited, so that way I can use Queen Jezebel and High King Iron Gut combo. These two just work together beautifully, and then you just put people that can get the mana in the same lineup. That's very nice. But in general, when you're going to build your lineup, what I recommend you always do is do your sort and just sort by base rarity. Figure out who's going to be useful in a delve perspective. So people that I have mythic-wise, let me just show all, just in case there's other people. Definitely would not do this. So Arachnean Weaver could potentially be useful. Webbing everybody means that all that really strong magic damage that they do is not going to be able to punch through if they're webbed. So you can get some benefit with somebody like this. I generally don't like this kind of a troop in a high-level delve perspective. The damage he does just isn't really that much, so you're pretty much just using him for the webbing effect. So not so much dependable for killing, and he doesn't necessarily scale, so I don't like that so much. If you were running a dervish class, you could potentially pump him up a lot. But I still don't think the damage that he's going to do is going to be sufficient for what you'd be looking for in a delve. He doesn't have loop potential, so not that great. Champion I don't think is very good from a delving perspective either. His damage is just very, very low. You're not really going to be able to draw out a fight this long to make this useful. Doomclaw you can definitely build around, so again, he's got this ability to potentially devour 2 people. So when you're going through a delve, if you really don't have High King Iron Gut and you're trying to figure out what else I could use, Doomclaw is somebody you could lean on instead. Like I could run this exact same lineup here, only put Doomclaw in there. It wouldn't be nearly as effective, but it could also work just fine. You just kind of have to pray that Doomclaw actually eats people. But the moment he eats people, then you're pretty much in a really good spot. So somebody, if you don't have Iron Gut, you could lean on a little bit to try and sneak your way through. Nothing else here. Infernus I wouldn't argue is very good from a delving perspective at the higher levels. Earlier levels, of course, he's great, but his damage isn't going to scale. He's good for loot potential. If you want to use him for burning for some reason, you could potentially do that. Jotner, he's okay, so you'll get a lot of barriers out of him if you have a loop-heavy lineup, so that could be fun. But I don't think he has no loop potential himself, and his damage, while it is very good, you do give up your turn to do it, so it's a little risky. I could definitely see him being used, however, just for the passive barriers, not even thinking about his damage. Ketris is pretty cool. He can definitely do a really strong nuke. He does scale, but not nearly as quickly as you would need him to be successful at level 500. You could totally have him in your lineup though, as far as single target or total damage goes, across all of these, he's one of the highest. So if you do have Ketris, you could potentially build around him. I think you'd find he loses effectiveness around level 200 or so. Phoenicia, while she does do extremely high damage in general, I don't think she's going to be very successful at high level delves. Again, she doesn't have loop potential. She requires a Firestorm to be running to be effective damage-wise. If you're doing that, that means you need to be running a Sun Spear more than likely, or pairing her with somebody like Infernus or Garuda to try and get that. So not a big fan of Phoenicia from a delve perspective. Queen Aurora could totally be used. Defensive troop, gonna barrier everybody, give everybody health, mana generation, so you could totally build something with Queen Aurora. Queen of Sin I don't think is going to be all that useful from a delve perspective. While Blesses is extremely strong, you're not so much worried about debuffs while you're delving, you're much more worried about damage, so Barrier is actually a much better thing to have. So even building a pure demon lineup, this whole Bless all demon allies thing, even if you built a purely demon lineup with a sorcerer class, so your hero is a demon, I don't think Bless is going to really push you through to be successful. You really want barriers, and that's why Queen Aurora would actually be better. Scorpius I don't really think would be that useful. Scotty not so much either. Stonehammer, even though he has insane reduction from skulls, you're going to have a hard time punching through the enemy since he does no damage himself. The fact that he stuns everybody is pretty nice, however, and delves stunning people means you'll at least be able to do skull damage to them back in return. So if you're building a skull kind of lineup, he could potentially be used. I could see that being a thing. Suna, while she does scale, I think she's too slow for something like a high-level delve. I don't think you're really going to be able to build a lineup around her. Really solid troop as far as getting damage and pumping your magic damage with Fairy Fire, but again, you would need to cast her 3, 4, or 5 times to really start doing some considerable damage to these super high-level delve troops, and by that time you've probably put yourself in a really bad spot in the first place. Possessed King, of course, is great everywhere. I'm using him passively in my lineup again just for this extra explosions on 4/5s. He's really just used for mana generation. What's also nice in delves is that transform is very strong, so if you transform a troop, you essentially take something that was super, super strong and turn them into a little kitten. So that's always really nice to do. I would never depend on this spell to be successful, but it's kind of nice to have the option to do that if you require it. Nothing else is jumping out at me. Tina, again, while doing super high damage, you could totally build something around Tina since his damage is just that strong. He does have spell resistance, which is really nice. But, at the high level delves, you're going to have to shoot the same person 3 to 5 times to really kill them, so you would potentially want somebody that could magic pump him a lot. And the only troop that I could really think of that could magic pump him that quickly would be someone like Diviner or maybe a Princess Fizzbang. But that's again super random if that's even going to happen. So hard to build a lineup around him, but if you don't have any other damage dealing mythics or troops in general, you could totally try and be effective with this. That is about it. You could totally build something around Yasmin's Chosen actually. So Since this is green, we could use something like an Essence of Evil, pair it with Yasmin's Chosen, put a Leprechaun in there, and then you'll actually be able to do some pretty cool stuff. That wouldn't be so bad. You could totally delve with that. You're going to have pretty much the only trouble you would maybe have is against like dwarf team lineups where they're invulnerable to a lot of status effects. But overall, I think that would still be very strong. You could probably get pretty deep with just that. Same thing for Wild Queen. If I think I passed over her before. You could totally use her in the same kind of capacity. The only argument I have against her from delving is that the attack that she steals and gives to the first troop isn't strong enough. Like when you're delving and the other team is doing like 100 plus damage, taking 27 away from them isn't nearly as effective as you would think, and you'd probably end up just return firing skulls to yourself way more often than you'd like. So not very dependable from a delving team perspective. That kind of covers all the mythics that would be useful, but again, if you can build this lineup, I strongly recommend it. To me, it's extremely dependable, something that's always cool. And then I'll just finally say that when you are doing a delve, if you're just trying to get it to level 500, definitely don't worry about, can I kill every single room all the way through. Like, your goal when you're doing this is just to like bum rush to the end if you can. So, you're not trying to win any awards for clearing out the entire thing. You don't really have to worry about it that hard. Definitely do not worry about getting 100% in the clear. Certainly feel free to challenge yourself. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you don't do it. I'm just saying it's certainly not necessary. Nothing you need to really focus on if you're doing this. So we got really lucky. We got that initial Devour right away. So that made this like super easy. I didn't have to worry about Trickster doing anything nice. So that was very lucky. But again, if I did get swapped around because of Trickster, I would just simply let him swap me again so I don't have to deal with Possessed King like mana blocking all my people. But fortunately, we kind of snuck through that pretty easy. Don't have to worry about anything. As far as the quickest path to the finish line, you're going to have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, either way. Technically, they're both about even difficulty as well. Like, this is a level 3, a level 4, and a level 3. This is a level 2, a level 5, and a level 3. So, I mean, that adds up to the same total either way. So, really, you can just kind of look and see which fight would be more annoying. This team I'm not ever really scared of, so that's not that big a deal. This team is, like, equally not that scary. I think I'd prefer this one. The other team has a lot more, like, annoying summon type troops, whereas this one just kind of has, like, less annoying summon type troops. So this path would be better. But again, either direction, like, in terms of difficulty, are the same. As you probably just saw there, I'm running this with a Sentinel class. The main reason I'm doing that is so I get those barriers on Browns. The only thing that I really need to worry about, they're only doing 68 right now. I think this is a level 180 delve or something like that. I wanted to show you guys one that's like progressing versus just completed. Having a Sentinel class is going to make this a lot easier. At this level, I could get away with running something like Titan, or I could get away with running something like heck, even like any class. They're not too scary just yet. Like 50 damage or 70 damage, like while that's really high, it's not to the point where it's like unmanageable. Like, you can survive something like this, whereas once you get to level 500 and these people are doing like, again, 200 type damage, like, it's just not something that you can sustain without something like a Sentinel class or a Titan giving you just barriers constantly. So fortunately, this is going to be pretty easy. Probably should have just taken those skulls, but that's fine. We'll get them this way. And then we're going to go over here. This fight's really not all that scary either. It's kind of, the only ones that you really ever need to worry about would be potentially like Cedric or like Glaceon, if you run into that team. Anyone that can like screw around with your lineup, that's never a good time. These people aren't really about that. They're just like poison oriented, so I'm not overly concerned about it. I've been getting insanely lucky with these like first attempt devours, so that's really fun. It's just making me look like a superhero over here, even though it's 100% RNG. I'm just going to go ahead and claim that I'm the best damn Gems of War player you've ever seen, and clearly can force the board to bend to my will to get all these insanely lucky matchups. So again, we get those killed, not that big a deal. If you don't have high King Iron Gut and you're kind of wondering like why does everyone think he's so great, hopefully this kind of gives you a demo as to why people think he is especially good. You always want to pair him up with somebody like a Queen Jezebel or a Chief Dragoon or something like that, something that's going to give him extra attack. Just by base, however, he's already got 49, at least on mine, so he's already more or less got like a 50% chance just to devour somebody by default, so that's really cool. In this one, I think we have 3 Devour immune ones, and then we've got this guy. So this is why you always have someone like Queen Jezebel in your lineup if you're pairing them with High King Iron Gut. She will deal his attack as damage, as a nuke. So my goal here is to use Iron Gut to devour this fortress, and then use her to just nuke everybody down from there. The only real damage that I'm worried about is her, so ideally I'd be able to like pick off her armor a little bit. If her armor is higher, then she can do some pretty nasty damage. It's going to do 150 straight up, which will just almost kill everybody on my team. So my goal here is to make sure that I'm the one that's getting to her before she does anything too scary. So we're going to hope I eat this. Oh man, my RNG skills are sick. So now we're just going to start nuking with Queen Jezebel. Again, all these people are Devour immune. Actually, yeah, he's immune too. So since they're all immune, I know that wasn't going to do anything, but I had to at least like attempt to smack her a little bit. So you can see my my possessed king is not very happy, so I'm not going to be able to survive many more of those. Again, I'm just like kind of picking at her so that way I can reduce her armor a little bit. Realistically, I'm not going to be able to get it low enough to stop her damage. The only thing I can hope is that she does exactly that, which is hit one of my troops that are barriered. That's one of the nice things about running this with a Sentinel, is that I'm kind of randomly burying people as I go. There I was just trying to see if I would get a lucky transform, just for kicks. Again, I'm trying to whittle down her armor, so it's something to do. Even though I saw this 4-match here, I cast Iron Gut anyway, since that man is just going to go back to him. So at this point, we're just going to do this again. And I'm just going to keep playing like this until I don't have any 4 matches anymore. So fortunately now she's at 0 armor, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. We're going to just keep 4 matching until we are no longer satisfied. I wonder if we'll be able to just straight kill her this way. Finally done. So now we're going to nuke down Gimlet a little bit. No return skulls, so we'll just go this way. Unless this happens. Fortunately, we're still fine. I'm just going to blow this up. And we're very fortunate to be getting all that fun stuff. Going to hit him again. I'm just going to blow up the board again for fun. And we win. So the fights are definitely a little harder when the people are Devour immune. The Delves will always try and throw one team like that at you. Don't get too scared. If you have High King Iron Gut, you can totally get in there. Using Queen Jezebel to help like nuke them down, that's really the way to do it. If you had like a Chief Dragoon instead, like that could be someone you'd use to try and beef up your attack just so high that you can just start punching through anyway. That takes a little longer, so I wouldn't recommend that nearly as much. I feel like this is kind of your ideal lineup as far as that stuff goes. So of course now we're in that scenario where all my people got flipped up. Unfortunately I didn't get my Mountain Crusher full before that happened. So we're going to have a little bit more of a fun fight this time around. I fully expect to be losing my Possessed King as a result of that flip. It's kind of hard to survive when you have that kind of a flip. I'm just trying to see what moves I can make safely without taking any damage here. So fortunately she's blocking all of my mana here, but now we've got our Mountain Crusher up, so, and we're about to get flipped again, so that'll actually be nice. I totally want to flip this guy. I totally want to eat this guy is what I mean. You know, let's just play upside down, why not? Normally I would probably just let that guy flip me again, but I'm making a video and I don't care, so why not? I can get mana back pretty darn quick. That's fine. That's even better. We get to eat you. And now we're very close to just killing this guy. Let's get that skull away from his friends. Skull damage. Oh, he's agile. Why? We were so close. Feel like I don't want to deal with that. Transform? Yeah. I've never been so happy to summon a Yell before in my entire life. Like, technically that should be a terrible situation. We lost him anyway. Oh well. We're still gonna win overall, but figured I would throw that Hail Mary just to see if we could do something cool. Let's get rid of all that. Watch, it kills me anyway somehow. No, let's just eat him. And we're done. So overall, it's one of the harder delves, I would say, to punch all the way through. From a team composition lineup, it's very easy. That lineup that I just showed is very strong. You could pretty much beat any delve with that regardless. The thing that makes it a little more complicated is that Trickster is someone that you have to play around. That swapping up your lineup is pretty frustrating if it happens. And you also have to fight 5 fights to get all the way to the boss, kind of regardless of which way you want to go. So if you're punching through the Warrens, High King Iron Gut, of course, is going to be very great. However, if you don't have that, there's other options you could have. Hopefully me walking through the other Mythics that would potentially be useful. Gives you some idea of what you could be using instead. But yeah, that covers the Warrens. So hopefully that gave you guys some idea of what's going on with the Warrens. Feel free to submit any comments if you want any help with other kinds of teams. There's other teams that I could show you guys that would potentially be useful. You could totally use something like a Uralai and a Scorpius if you wanted to do that. If you happen to have some of the old school weapons, you could totally use something like a Yasmin's Pride and a Yao and a Ketris and a Green Seer or something like that. Those are all teams that are totally valid. However, the team that I showed you is probably the overall best team that you could possibly use. Let me just quickly show you the teams that you could be making, just for kicks. Other teams that I just mentioned real quick. So we've got, you could use like Apothecary. You could use that with a Essence. And you could use Iron Gut. What? Oh, weapons, right? Iron Gut, and then you could put a Leprechaun in there. And if you were doing this lineup, you could just run this with Sentinel as well. Or you could potentially run this with something like a Shaman or an Archer or a... what's the last one? Oh my god. Warden. You could potentially run it with those because they'd start with a Leaf Storm. That would kind of help you get going with your Essence of Evil. So this is a lineup that people in my guild have used, which is also very good. Another lineup you could potentially use again is everybody's favorite Dragon's Eye. You could go with this. Put that with a Scorpius, and then put in a Uralai. I don't have Uralai specifically, but just, and I also can't spell Uralai apparently. But you'd put Uralai in there, right there, and then you'd just use somebody like Gimlet. So again, pretend this is Uralai here, not High King Iron Gut, but that's a lineup you could use. Again, lots of browns. I would use that with just kind of whatever class you really want. Again, Sentinel would be very strong. Titan would also be very strong. Someone that's getting barriers on browns, that's really what you'd want to be going with this. But yeah, hopefully that gives you some idea of other teams you could possibly use. I'm a big fan, if you have High King Iron Gut, of course, to put him in there somewhere. But that's always a nice thing to do. But again, that covers the Warrens. Hopefully that was helpful, and that can help you get all the way up to level 500 there and unlock your little pet. But this is Keylime again, signing off. Thanks, guys.